Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a little show where I talk about the crime dramas that I like that I am currently watching. For today's, we're going to talk about this week's episode of Limitless. Limitless started off with Brian and his sister Rachel bonding a little bit, but that bonding comes to an end when we have Sans, the enforcer dude who pretty much works for Morra, uh, shows up with like a shard in his leg. Uh, Brian Brian's there. He's obviously like freaking out a little bit, but not nearly as much as his sister. Brian takes some NZT and patches uh, Sans up, and he ends up getting caught up in whatever Sans is doing because Sans is like, I need your help. Brian tells his sister not to mention this to anyone. I mean, granted, it's understandable because he wants to keep Sans, you know, the fact is that him and Sans are working together. Obviously, he doesn't want that to get back to the FBI because that could prove to be very problematic for him in the mall. Let's jump over to the FBI, who just got a new case about a boy who was kidnapped. And at this point, we also have Rebecca kind of showing very little interest in her birthday. She kind of actually hates her birthday. And, at the beginning, you're kind of wondering, okay, like, why is she so against her birthday? But then later on, she confesses as to why she dislikes her birthday. A couple years ago, her dad kind of been on the outs with the family, was trying to turn his life around. He told Rebecca, I'm going to show up at your birthday party, so don't worry. And, Rebecca was happy about it. She's like, okay, dad says he's going to turn his life around. Good, good. So, her birthday came, but her father didn't show up. And she was pissed at him. She was just like, oh, great, he did it again. He bailed out on me. But she made a wish. And that wish was that she wished that he was dead and he would just leave her alone. Which, that's not necessarily what she holds on to. Maybe in some shape or form that she does still she resents herself a little bit for saying that. But what really got her was she assumed the worst in her dad. But the truth is, he didn't bail on her that day. The reason why he didn't show up for her birthday party because he was dead floating in a river. That's his reason for not showing up. And I think she holds herself responsible for all assuming the worst, assuming like, oh, he didn't show up because he bailed on me again, and not, and I guess that in itself just kind of weighed on her over all this time. Hence why she's kind of throughout the episode a little reserved about, they're like, oh, don't worry about Brian, don't worry about Finch, he's just probably taking a lazy day, or whatever. It's like, that's why she's a little worried about him, because she's like, when she automatically assumed her dad was flaking on her, he died. So she, I guess in the back of her mind, she doesn't want to take that chance with anyone else. So let's go back over to Sans and Brian. We find out that basically Sans has a list of names, and all these names are connected to Sans' past, which in this episode we learn a little bit more about him, about his upbringing, as well as what eventually led to him becoming a part of MI6. And I really like this whole construction of Sans's backstory, because it was all done in the format of a comic book. I really like how the show is always changing up its formats on how stuff is displayed, and a lot of stuff connected to Sans is in the format of a comic book, and I thought that was a pretty neat design choice. I really liked it. But we basically learned that Sans was a part of a group, and in that group he had a mentor named Tanner. Well, him, as well as the other three members, I guess it was, other members of 3 or 4 other members of that MI6 group, basically turn against Tanner, because obviously they did a lot of illegal stuff back in the day, and when it finally caught up to them, they sold out Tanner to kind of get lighter sentences themselves. Granted, they could never do any kind of covert missions in uh, the UK anymore. I think in Europe altogether. I can't remember, but it's like they were kind of, their group was dissolved. Well, basically, Tanner is blackmailing Sands into killing all of the members of that MI6 group as payback. And Brian's constantly wondering, like, why, what could he have over you that you are so willing to go along with this? And he ends up finding out that the FBI's, well, not really him, but you find out that basically the case that the FBI is working on, the missing boy, is connected to Sands. That missing boy is actually Sands' son. Years ago, Sands had fallen in love with a woman named Anastasia, but in their line of work, that was one of their golden rules, is that they can't be tied down by a relationship. And Tanner killed Anastasia to remove that distraction, quote unquote distraction, from Sands' life. And Sands could never prove it, but he always knew. That was one of the reasons why he turned against Tanner, because he was super hesitant in the beginning, because he was like, no, we don't turn on one of our own. The others wanted to, but he was like, no, we don't turn on our own. But then Anastasia died. That's what pushed him to turn on Tanner. But this boy is actually Sands' son. After his before kind of finding his way to where he is now, Sands had given his son up for adoption some years ago. And so Tanner's been holding him holding him as a hostage for Sands to rectify the past in a sense. But after, after sharing a little more with Brian and Sands come upon a black book. Basically, it was like a black book that one of Sands' friends, a fellow member of the MI6 group that they were a part of, had created a black book that helped track down Tanner. And though we don't get to see it, Brian kind of imagines, he's like, oh, I'm pretty sure the fight between Sands and Tanner was pretty epic, but he didn't get to see it, so we didn't get to see it neither. But they were able to rescue Sands' son, and he was able to be returned to his parents, his adopted parents. At the very end of the episode, we have Brian looking through that black book, and Morra's name comes up, just a little bit more information about Morra, about how, stuff that, specifically the FBI already knows. But I think this is Brian's first time learning this information about how Morra started off as a nobody and quickly rose to the powerful position he's in right now. And basically, finding out that Morra is monopolizing NZT. NZT was a lot harder to come around back then, basically during the events of the Limitless movie, back when Morra was kind of a nobody. But basically now Finch is seeing that Morra basically wiped out everyone that was connected to NZT, the dealers as well as customers. Those included, that also included Rebecca's dad. So that he pieced it together. It's like Sands killed Rebecca's dad, which it's like their relationship was already entering a good place, Sands and Brian, just because the whole saving Sands son, it'd be interesting to see where the relationship was going to go after that. But now that he knows that Sands is the one that killed Rebecca's father, it's like that relationship is developing in a completely different way now too. And it's like, what is Brian going to do with this information? I mean, because he can't let on about this whole. I mean, because we already have Rebecca very suspicious of Morra just to begin with, because she's just, everything's pieced together in her mind that Morra is on NZT, and you know, that failed attempt of Sans trying to pay her off to be a part of his team, to be a part of Morra's team. So she's already like very suspicious of Sans too. So it's like, I don't know. I'm very curious as to what Brian decides to do with he. I mean, because I know because he can't really tell Rebecca the truth about Sans without revealing everything he knows. You know, so. But that's about it. Really all I want to talk about for Limitless. But until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.